So our first celebrity segment for today, I am so excited. I'm going to be chatting to one of the greatest radio and TV presenters in South Africa. In my mind, one of the best. I really do believe that.
The RDR Show with Robbie Durant.
Xola Ntshinga, originally who was with Supersport, then went on to Jacaranda FM breakfast show as the director of CONQA Group as well. Probably the nicest guy as well in South Africa when it comes to broadcasting. Welcome to the RDR show.
Oh, what a pleasure, Robbie. And I love your new setup. When we last spoke, it was coming together. There was a bit of COVID, a lot of uncertainty and massive changes. So I'm really happy to see how you've grown and how you've kept it going.
No, thank you, X. It has been a process. I think COVID for all of us was massive. I'm going to go right back in the early days, X. Did broadcasting ever cross your mind, or when did it actually get into a process of, hey, listen, this is actually what I want to do?
Yeah, it's a story I've actually, it was a question I've contemplated a number of times. I think it was in varsity where I first thought, okay, broadcasting is an option. It's something that I can do. I went to the University of Pretoria. I was registered to study law. I got into first year. I got stuck in head first. Joined the legal clinic, the law clinic in the varsity, because you want to involve yourself and immerse yourself as much as possible. Doing some back work as well on holidays, and it didn't take very long for me to realize that this is not it for me. I do understand that there's that link when it comes to communicating. Somebody who's a bit of a talkaholic like I am. So it kind of seemed like a marriage or a match made in heaven, but it wasn't really. But before that even, I think at school I was exposed to quite a lot of performance. And when I say performance, I'm a choir boy, and quite used to being on stage and standing up in front of people and singing in front of people, though I did it fairly badly. But a great way to overcome the nerves, to learn how to behave in front of a live audience or in front of people. And you know that people can obviously always be critical. So, my parents, I think for my sins, sent me to the Drakensberg Boys Choir School when I was still 9 years old.
Wow.
And for 5 years, we traveled, we toured, we sang, I traveled internationally as well. And I think that's probably where the performance side of things would have started, where I was like, okay, cool, I'm quite happy with this being in front of people thing. And then in varsity, I tried to join the radio station, and I hope no one from Text FM is watching, but they rejected me. They bounced me so quickly. They were like, sorry, Ruth, it's not going to happen for you. And then I went off and tried to do other things and, earn a living, and had a garden service business for a little while, which was actually quite a lot of fun. And then moved to Johannesburg and then sold. And as any salesperson with his thoughts will tell you, photocopiers and fax machines is the door in. So I did that, sold cars as well. For a BMW dealership, and then Minis came online, and I sold those also incredibly badly. But while I was selling cars, I did retail radio on the weekends. So I'd finish off at the dealership on a Saturday afternoon, straight through to the studio, and do in-store music radio. And then on a Sunday, I'd repeat that. And then Monday morning, back to the dealership for the actual day job, in the hopes that it will end up being on a commercial platform. Unfortunately for me, it was.
Wow. Well, you and I must be pretty much the same age, because I'm going to tell you a quick story. When I was 9 years old, I auditioned for Drakensberg Boys Choir on the phone at Dale Jr. in King Williamstown, and I made it. But the one thing was, I said, was there rugby? There was no rugby, so I kind of said, no ways. But our paths probably would have passed and would have been singing together there, man.
Well, they lied to you, and I think you probably spoke to the choir master, and I know Bunny Ashley Buerta was his name. He's the guy that I auditioned with and became my choir master for 5 years, and he hated rugby. He used to call it a barbarian sport. He's one of those royal music educated folk from the UK, and he just never understood what this game was all about. Was a massive hater of the game, but I respected the man because he always spoke his mind, and he was a wonderful musician, and he introduced music to so many kids across his lifespan, but he hated it. But we did have a pretty decent rugby team by the time I left the Drakensberg. And there aren't very many big schools around the Central Berg. So you'd play schools from Winterton, from Bergville, all these small little farming towns. And by virtue, I suppose, of having a slightly bigger school than the others, we'd actually do quite well. We'd wipe the floor with those Northern KZN boys. Wow. They probably want to admit it now. But yeah, we went through a season unbeaten when I was, under 13. It was fantastic. I loved playing rugby in the mountains. And added to that, and this is how I, for my sins, became a Sharks supporter, don't tell anyone, is that Ian McIntosh would send the Banana Boys up to the Berg for their preseason because they're at altitude. It's the closest they're going to get to it from Durban. And the school was the only one with a half-decent rugby field away from people. So, you'd see like the Cabos van der Westhuizens and the Robert Dupreers coming into the Berg pre-season, and, you'd idolize these monster human beings as a little 9-year-old, and I think that cottoned me onto the game of rugby whilst I was at a music school.
Well, I think my experience was like 86, 87. We're throwing our age away out here, but I think it was kind of that time. So it's quite crazy how your paths could pass, and you never know, 30, 40 years down the line, you're chatting to somebody who you could have experienced 9, 10, 11 years, of music, and they lied to me. There was good rugby there,
There was decent rugby. I wouldn't say good, just decent.
Tell me something. You were. I look up to yourself. When I'm talking about broadcasters, yourself, Kobani Bobo, the late Xola Ntshinga, all have been mentors kind of to, like, from commentary point of view. Kobani's been outstanding, and Kounda before he passed away. You at one stage, incredible face of Supersport. What was the catalyst for you to step out of that and then go into what you're doing now, which is incredible work?
Well, radio came before television for me, so it was always my natural home. And I had been, having worked at a music in-store retail radio station, I was always thinking I'm trying to be a bit of a music radio station guy. It didn't quite work out that way because the first commercial gig I got, I'm sorry, that's the doorbell, and you might hear a dog barking soon as well. These things happen.
It's part of it.
It is part of it. And fortunately or unfortunately, I still can't quite figure it out. The first gig that I did get on a commercial station was with 702. So I went straight into a talk radio station. It was really weird because I was still quite young. I was 23 years old when I got there, and sort of 2 years after doing a bit of graveyard shift and 4 a.m. shows, like an early breakfast show, as a talk show host, bizarrely, they said, okay, well, let's sit down and actually talk about giving you a proper contract now, and seeing that you're part of the furniture, we know that you can do this, you seem to be quite comfortable. And when I stepped into the station manager's office, who was Yusuf Abramji at the time, Yusuf said to me, Xola, I just looked at your ID. Yeah, how old are you? And I said, Yusuf, 25. He's like, how long have you been working here? I said, 2 years. And he's like, we've got a rule that no under 25s are allowed on air. And I'm like, well, I'm 25 now, so we might as well go with it. I ended up on talk radio, and I think it was KG Karapodis, the news editor at the time, who, after I'd covered quite a lot about rugby, and I think it just always crept into into the things that I spoke about on the show. She said, well, why don't you do sports for us instead of this talk stuff? And it was a no-brainer for me, and I made the switch and jumped onto John Robbie's show as the sports anchor on the breakfast show, which was great fun. It didn't take terribly long. I think about less than a year into it, I got a call from somebody else who'd worked at 702 to say Supersport. But I left Supersport ultimately because, I'll be honest, there was quite a massive shake-up at the top of the hierarchical structure. And, there were a couple of things I didn't agree with at the time. And you could sort of stay, bide your time, or you could stay and be frustrated, or you could sort of say, okay, you know what, I've done 15 years of this company. Let's move on. Let's do other things. Back to radio seems like the natural progression. I did have a little bridging period where I was with Newsroom Africa, and I think they still have me on their books. I don't know. I should call HR and see if they're happy to pay me for not being there. Back to radio seems to make a lot of sense for me. And you know what? They always have this joke in the world of radio. For those who don't know, they say if you want a radio gig, you literally have to wait for somebody to die.
Yeah.
There's very few opportunities. Jacaranda actually came knocking, and I thought, well, I'm not going to wait around for another year, 2 years, 5 years potentially. Let me jump on board. I don't know too much about Jacka and its audience, but it's, I think, very welcoming sort of environment. Another PE boy, Martin Bester, does the breakfast show on there, and he's made it completely easy to slot in. It's always great to run into an Eastern Caper. I think we get each other.
Yeah, we do. You've actually slid into my next question. Was you're on the breakfast show now? You're with the legend Martin Bester and yourself, and you got such an incredible group. Your trip to France, you guys got nicely swept off and taken to France for the rugby. How was your experience there? Just give us a little rundown. I mean, I saw you walking through the city there. It's just so beautiful. Your little video clips were really cool. How was the experience?
Oui, monsieur. It was c'est très magnifique, it was. And it came about 2 weeks before I actually ended up there. So I was completely unaware that there was any such trip on. And we a year away, less from the World Cup. And Air France are a partner. They've decided that they need to impress on South Africans that they are available for this direct route to Paris, to Charles de Gaulle. And then another organization called Explore France also wanted to highlight to South Africans that not only can you make your way to France for the World Cup, but don't necessarily go to Paris. There's other things to see. And that's how we ended up in the south of France, which was great. I've only ever been to Toulouse outside of Paris. So to go to see Toulon and then to see Marseille, for me, was absolutely phenomenal. And the south is very Mediterranean. The weather was lovely. It's supposed to be cold and, autumn there going towards winter. But, we were looking at sort of 21, 22 degrees, 23 degrees on average. So great weather, wonderful people, too much food, fantastic wine. And the only brief I was given was, just show South Africans what it's like here, rather than following the usual tourist trap to Paris, which I hope I did fairly successfully. But then I also stayed on the show because technology is such that I can do the show from a hotel room, and that's what I did.
Yeah, what an incredible opportunity. X, you were at that game on over the weekend. Rassie, I want your opinion of this, just from a sports broadcaster as well. Rassie's continuing with these runs. Now, to me, he's bringing up some very valid points there, but does it get to a situation where the refs are, when they've got a 50-50 decision to make, their subconscious is going against us? What's your opinion on this? Because it's a very sensitive thing, and I know Rassie's trying to highlight where the problems are, and we know there's big problems in the reffing and world rugby, the inconsistencies of what's happening. What's your opinion on this one?
Yeah, I always take a long time to actually settle in on an opinion. I've thought about this because it's been front of mind. It's been in all the bulletins and the news, and we've seen the tweets, obviously. But I think early doors, what I thought was, unfortunately, it sets a little bit of a culture, which I think trickles down to the sort of South Africa fan base. Yeah. We do already have a reputation as being the whingers of world rugby. I actually don't think that's true. I think that's more perception than anything.
I've listened to give it to the Aussies.
Yeah, I've heard the Aussies go on. I've heard English rugby supporters go on and on as well. I've also heard, to a very large degree, New Zealand fans go off when things don't go their way. And I don't think we're any worse than those nations are, but I do think that our reputation has become worse. So I that's the downside for me. I I really don't like to be lumped into this, you guys just always whinge. I always have this overarching thought that the best time to whinge against a referee is when you've won, and particularly when you won well. You know, if you wipe the floor with the team and you got 20, 30 points on them, and then you say, but the referee was still poor, I think holds a little bit more water. I don't think that invalidates what Rusty's been showing us, because most of those clips, I think, have merit. I just don't know if he's highlighting them in the times where it's going to go very far. So I always think, do it when we've won. And that way it will carry a little bit further. I don't necessarily hold any water for World Rugby. I think that the refereeing in the last couple of seasons has been absolutely shocking at times, has been, if anything, inconsistent. And I think Rusty is very right to be able to have the opportunity to highlight these things. What makes me worry, Robbie, is that, well, if somebody in Rusty's shoes doesn't have the opportunity or the platform to sit down with the powers that be at World Rugby and say, guys, this is an issue, that's an issue, there's inconsistency there, I don't understand that call and it deserves to be looked at, certainly. If Rusty Erasmus doesn't have the opportunity to do it, how much less ordinary rugby supporters as well? So, yes and no. Don't like that he does it in the manner that in which he does, and also the timing, do it after a win. But I think he makes pertinent points.
Yeah, he does. He certainly does. Okay, X, just very quickly, tell me a little bit about CONQA. You are a director of CONQA. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a little company that was started by a guy, Justin Wolford, for his sins. Also went to school in the Eastern Cape, but has English heritage and is actually based in the UK. And then our other partner, Pierre Sharples, is based in Australia. So the three of us are scattered across the planet. And we are heavily involved in the live eventing space. Our big event is the Elite Sports Summit, which we do in Cape Town every year. We held it this year on the 13th, the 12th and the 13th of October. We bring in about 300 coaches from across South Africa. Some of them do travel from overseas. We expose them to 5 top minds on day 1, 5 top minds on day 2, so 10 speakers over 2 days. But the big thing for us is the interaction. So it's no point for us getting somebody to come in from Arsenal Football Club. We've had the head of medical from Chelsea. We've had the head of academy from Man City, I beg your pardon, to come in and address coaches who are coaching at schools, at varsities, locally. It's one thing to have them standing on stage. What's important for us is that they interact with the audience, that they actually get to ask them questions, to be able to say, I went away and I learned this. It's great. It's great to be able to say that rather than I attended a thing, there was a great speaker and I went home. We had Kieran Reid come in this year. He was one of our speakers just to talk about leadership and what it means for him and how it's changed, and obviously the All Blacks and all of that. So that's a really, really major part of what we do. We also have since branched out into a business leadership space. So we do a business leadership summit in London every year. And we, for the first time this year, did one in New York, though that was a very different market. We're still umming and ahhing as to whether or not we want to go back. But for a South African, little South African company to be as well received as we were in those 2 markets and territories tells us absolute volume. So, yeah, CONQA is what I spend most of my time on.
Well, I'm sure post-COVID it must have been pretty difficult. X, just quickly, we're going to throw a couple of spitfire questions at you just to get to know who Xola Ntshinga is. It's just one or the other. You just answer one or the other and we're ready to roll.
Okay.
Right. Are you ready? Braai or Potjie?
I'm ready. Braai.
What car do you drive?
I actually don't at the moment, and that's because I was the sad owner of the best car I've ever driven, worst car I've ever owned. The Land Rover.
Tequila or Jägermeister?
Jägi.
Yes, I saw you went like this when you heard both those things. They both are not.
Yeah, I'm like, are you going to give me a good option?
Your favorite stadium in the world where you've either broadcast from or commentated from?
That is a tough question. Because of the occasion, I'd say the House of Pain, and that's only because Ricky January gave us something memorable there.
Were you there? I was actually playing rugby in New Zealand that same time when he chipped over, got that ball and scored the try. I was one of the Scarfies. I had a Springbok jacket on the Scarfie stance. You must know how hectic that was. Radio or TV?
Yeah, that was a thing. Radio.
Your favorite rugby player of all time?
Jonna.
That's a goodie. Who's the most irritating person in the world right now? Who grinds your beef?
Am I allowed to say Angus Gardner?
Hey, I thought we were nice to the refs.
Well, I don't know.
You contradicted them.
But it's a little bit. There is this as well, but it's a little bit political. But it's only because I've heard his voice come through on the airwaves for the first time in quite a long time. Donald Trump.
Oh, the Trumpmeister.
He's back. He's back in the sphere.
Yes, he's doing better than Sleepy Joe, I can tell you that. Quickly now, your best memory of broadcasting?
Being at the 2007 Rugby World Cup final, being on the field, to see the box, walk away with a World Cup trophy away from home.
Wow. That must have been an incredible opportunity and experience. Xola Ntshinga, I just got to say once again, thanks very much for your time, for continually just always opening the doors whenever I ask you for an interview. Obviously, the RDR show, we want to go from strength to strength. You certainly are helping us take that step. And I just want to wish you well in your radio, hopefully broadcasting coming through TV, as well as going forward into your CONQA. I think it's really exciting stuff. And from my side, thank you so much for your time and just for everything that you have done.
Oh, thanks so much, my brother. Thank you for reaching out when you did. I mean, it's been a couple of years now. And it's wonderful to have this association. So I hope you guys consider me, because I consider myself part of the furniture there, and at the very least, a friend of the show. So it is always wonderful to catch up and to have a chat and to talk rugby, as always.
And have a blessed Christmas. We're already almost at Christmas. You and your family, I know you're very close to your kids and stuff. Have an awesome one, and we'll chat to you soon.
Nice one. Yeah, I got to buy the boss's gifts now. It's not looking good. But likewise to you too, and to the viewers.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks,
cheers. Bye-bye.
The RDR Show with Robbie Durant.